That's Brandon.
Hello.
We got Matt joining us from the Crossover Podcast.
Hey.
I'm Nick. So today's topic, we're going to discuss the boundary lines of New York, or more specifically Manhattan, and see who's allowed to cross into where and who doesn't go into somebody's territory, like whose territory is like under lock and key.
Wait, so we're only talking Manhattan?
We'll talk New York because
there's going to be there's
going to be a lot of New York crossovers.
So we won't run out of material if we just stick to Manhattan. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Who do you like? Who's got their area under lock and key, and who's not allowed to go anywhere in there?
You know what I always find interesting, since we're going to, as a jump off point, Cap is from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But he's never there. Even when he was a cop for a while, like way back before our
So you're
day.
saying that Steve Rogers has forgot his roots, is what you're saying?
I'm saying that Brooklyn is completely, just left to other people to take care of.
So he's in Rocky 3 right now, where he's just like living the high life and has completely forgotten where he came from.
There's no easy way out
Shots
for
fired.
him.
We've got a bunch of lists up here, and like the closest people in terms of where he is, probably Shield, their headquarters, their old school headquarters, and which is quite a bit south of there, and Iron Man's
Stark Tower.
at 59th and Broadway.
Actually, the closest ones towards each other, which would overlap, would have to be Daredevil and Luke Cage. Luke Cage running Harlem and Daredevil running the kitchen.
Well, that's what makes them so great in terms of when they do pair them up, even in like the Netflix series and stuff. It makes sense.
This has always like intrigued me, this conversation, because like just from watching the movies and reading the comics, like there's so many heroes in New York, and it's like, how the hell do they not like cross over with each other, or like how do they know where their boundaries lie?
Well, what do they call Spider-Man's area? Like Flatiron District,
Flatiron, or like Queens.
Yeah,
mostly.
so
Now it's Queens.
It is Queens. Yeah, I should.
But I mean, like, I know for Daredevil, especially with Hell's Kitchen, like I go back to an old, I go back to the old, the Ultimate runs, and there was a 3-issue crossover between Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Daredevil. Where Shield's hunting down Wolverine to the point where they have him pinned, and Daredevil shows up and pretty much kicks Shield
out of the kitchen. Yeah,
kicks him right out.
Get out! Get out!
Oh God, I think if I were a villain in the Marvel Universe, I would just go anywhere other than New York and commit crimes.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I think that would. I stay away from New York and stay away from outer space.
Stay away from the West Coast
and,
too.
Yeah, and I think you're fine. Like if you start committing crimes in Wisconsin, you're probably
but then again,
right.
if you commit crimes in New York and you get kicked out of New York as a villain, maybe you got a better chance in Jersey.
Yeah, it's possible.
But then you're in Tony Soprano territory, and you don't want to be in Tony Soprano territory.
Yeah.
There's the big one that we're overlooking is the 4. And they're very central. I'm blanking on the name here.
Oh, the Baxter Building?
Baxter Building.
Yeah.
Sorry, 42nd and Madison. Got the Dorkley map up in front of us. Thank you, Dorkley, for
plug
Very
Dorkley
Shout out
as
to
one.
those guys.
yeah.
But I mean, even with the Baxter Building in place, like there's also the Sanctum Sanctorum.
Yeah, it's on that's south end of the island.
Yeah.
right? If I remember correctly.
But I mean, all these buildings, it's like, how the hell do they not like? They're walking down the street to go grab like a sandwich, and it's like, oh, hey, you're Reed Richards. Hey, you're Doctor Strange. Right on.
Well, we're from Canada.
Kenyatta.
Oh, Canada, a home and native land.
If you concentrated that many heroes in one city or in one area, there's so much more of the country that's left unprotected. Like you said, Matt, I realize that America's slightly smaller. They have the much more regular flight schedule to a lot of places here. But, I think the biggest thing for the comics has always been that recognizability. The population is so dense, in that area as well as on the West Coast.
But the thing I have to ask is, is there an invisible line? Like, say Spider-Man's chasing down a villain in Queens, and all of a sudden he just crosses into the kitchen. Does he just stop his pursuit?
Like
there?
his jurisdictions
He has
there,
absolutely. There is a great issue of Spider-Man where Daredevil kicks him out. We'll put that in our. I'll throw that in our picks.
But I mean, like, there's that invisible line that nobody crosses. But who's got the
Like
balls
if you go
to
past 50, like if Spider-Man's fighting a guy and then it goes past 50th Street, he's like, "Well, that's it for me." He
Yeah,
just stops pursuing the alleged murderer.
You
I
know,
guess.
the way I put it in context, and I know they're not the same, and I hate the comparison between Cap and Superman. But say, for example, look at, I think it's maybe the 6th or 7th issue of Doomsday Clock, where they talk about how Superman is the only hero who doesn't have to acknowledge all the borderlines. He's still welcome everywhere, despite the superhero arms race that's going on in that book. I think Cap is that guy. As much as I said off the top jokingly, Cap kind of left Brooklyn to its own devices. I think that he's welcome anywhere. I think that he can go out to rural Wisconsin. I think that he can go to, Oregon. I think he can go wherever.
Westchester.
Yeah.
On his motorcycle for a run.
Yeah.
What do you think the safest neighborhood in Marvel Comics New York is? Why is Canada always mentioned as the bad guy? Sound off in the comments below. That's the thing. That's what gets me. It's like, what if it's like a hot, like I said, the hot pursuit where you just stop? Like, how do you know the other hero is going to pick it up? What if he's like out doing something that day?
He's got to shout him a text. Like Spider-Man just texts Daredevil.
Yeah.
It's like, there you go, bud.
Hot.
The other thing too is just because of the population density, you have to think like this is the worst area to fight crime in.
Yeah.
Get them out of there.
You gotta, yeah.
Like the X-Men have the right idea. If people go up to upstate New York,
You got
know,
open fields.
Yeah.
It's not like the Power Rangers where it's like
Well-
all of a sudden a Megazord comes down and they're in the middle of a rock quarry.
Yeah. Or Dragon Ball Z. Yeah, where it's everything. There's just a convenient wasteland that they can destroy.
Yeah.
Spider-Man needs those tall buildings though. He's
Oh, yeah,
one of the
he
guys
does.
like Spider-Man, like because there's that great scene in Homecoming where he's running across the golf cart, just going, or the golf friggin' course going, this sucks, right? And it's just like, so Spider-Man's one of those guys who doesn't necessarily fit that criteria there, Nick, but
Yeah.
but like your point taken though is the thing. But Spider-Man is the exception rather than the rule, I think, on that one, where he needs the big tall buildings in order to actually fight crime, help him fight crime.
Like Iron Man, I know would have the balls
yeah.
to cross over into Hell's Kitchen because he won't care about. He doesn't care. Iron Man just does his
What's
own thing.
Daredevil going to do? Throw that stick at him? Like, and
you
I love Daredevil,
Yeah.
but like, come on, no contest against Iron Man.
Question: who would protect Marvel Comics?
Stanley.
They're at 575 Madison, I think. I'm pulling it up here on Google. They have 2 locations. Marvel Entertainment is where are we here? Unit 7, 135 West 50th Street. But at 575 Madison Avenue, who's that? Is that Shield? Is Shield protecting?
Shield has to protect.
Yeah, I think it's either going to be Shield or I think Iron Man's coming down.
No, I
an
think
interesting
it's like a
Fifth
foot
Avenue,
race
you
between
know?
the Fantastic Four and Luke Cage, realistically.
Yeah.
Because that's right dead square in the middle. You
Okay.
got Iron Man on one corner, you got Luke Cage in Harlem, the Baxter Building's right there, and Shield. But Shield, I don't think would care. It's like, well, screw it.
I don't think that Luke is leaving 42nd Street though. Like as powerful as he is, this is something else Paul and I were talking about recently.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of conversation you want to have with your wife before you go to bed at night. By the way, I'm very hi Paula. Is that and check out Paula's podcast as well on our network. By the way, yeah, it's very good. Talking about cooler comics than we are, or not cooler, less superhero-y if you're into that. Not cool, but I said, for all the power and his skill set that Luke has, he really is a neighborhood hero. He, just as much as, say, for example, Spider-Man has the moniker of friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, his powers are so elevated, that he can really technically, strength-wise, if you want to do power scaling, which I know is not your thing, Nick,
Yeah.
but he could go, on the level with guys like the Hulk.
Oh, for sure.
So he tends to be involved, and also because of popularity, he tends to be involved in bigger scale events. Whereas you don't see that as much with Luke, other than when he, temporarily joins the FF or something
Yeah.
like that. But for him, he's truly a neighborhood hero. He's a beacon. You do not come into his territory just the same way as Daredevil does, which is again why we keep bringing them up in the same vein. I think that that's a really interesting thing. That despite what's the difference really in terms of powers when you look at someone like the Thing, who travels internationally and helps people internationally
with a Ford Hemi and the Fantastic Car.
Exactly.
Aerodynamic design. Proton-powered acceleration to go up to 500 miles per hour. Flame-resistant seating. And yeah, it's got a Hemi. Introducing the Dodge Fantastic Car, the only car fit for the Fantastic Four. Oh, and it can fly. See it in Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Only in theaters.
Or Luke Cage, in terms of the indestructible nature of them, their strength, all of these things. It's very strange, that one is this very grassroots neighborhood hero, and in Power Man, and then of course like Ben Grimm is not that. He's this fantastical, kind of large story event guy.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just funny when you're talking about who would guard the Marvel building. I was getting flashbacks. You remember the final episode of the Spider-Man animated series? He was like talking to Stan Lee. Spider-Man was talking to Stan Lee, and it was just freaking weird. And it's just like, whose idea was this?
Oh, that's an amazing.
That had to be.
What? Spider-Man? Pam, hold my calls for a while. I think I've finally gone crazy.
Yeah.
So wait, was that the first Stan Lee cameo of all time?
No way.
No.
It's funny. I was listening to some of the old FF radio shows that we intro the podcast with, right? Mm-hmm. And he opens every one, right?
Oh wow!
And he narrates them.
That's amazing.
And it's so interesting when you think about just the legacy of the guys of that era, the Romita Seniors, the Kirbys, the
Romita Seniors are definitely on my list.
And whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. Ditko.
Yeah.
And obviously Stan the Man. But you forget how much we're sitting here talking about the landscape of a hypothetical fake city that's basically based on a real city.
Based on a real city, but the boundary lines that like governs these heroes.
Yeah, all out of the minds of a dozen people who at the time were looked down upon, for their involvement in the funny papers. It's interesting.
You can reach me on Twitter at Debate Comics, or shoot me a line via email, debate@explodingearth.com. I read everything that we get, and I reply to as much as we possibly can. That's it for this episode. Debate Comics will return.